Tonight, I graduated from Cambridge University in Arabic in 1983. He lived in Cairo for 3 years studying Islam under traditional teachers at Al-Azhar, one of the oldest universities in the world. He went on to reside for 3 years at Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, where he administered a commercial translation office and maintained close contact with Habib Ahmad Mashhoor and other ulama from Hadramaut and Yemen. In 1989, he returned to England and spent 2 years at the University of London training in Turkish and Farsi. He got his doctorate from Oxford University, specializing in religious life of the early Ottoman Empire. He is currently Secretary of the Muslim Academic Trust in London and Director of the Sunnah Project at the Center of Middle Eastern Studies at Cambridge University, which issued the first ever scholarly Arabic editions of major hadith collections. He is a translator of a number of works, including 2 volumes from Imam al-Ghazali's Ihya Ulum al-Din. He gives dars and halaqas from time to time and taught the works of Imam al-Ghazali at the winter 1995 Deen Intensive program in New Haven, Connecticut, here in the United States. He appears frequently on BBC Radio and writes occasionally for a number of publications, including the Independent newspaper, Q News International's Britain's premier Muslim magazine, and Seasons on the Al Zaytuna website, and their semi-academic journal. As I said before, this community values education a lot, and we are truly privileged to have somebody amongst us who's trained at 3 of the world's most premier universities. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Abdul Hakim Murad.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, wa alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. It's an honor for me to have been present, I think, at all of these gatherings that the Naqshbandiya Foundation has organized on the occasion of the celebration of the Milad. The first hadith that secondary school students at Al-Azhar University learn is كان أحب الأعمال إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم الدائم. The most beloved of all actions to Allah's Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم was the one that's done persistently, constantly. Even if our ibadah is little, it's good that it be done regularly. That's better than burdening ourselves with a lot and then giving up after a few weeks. So it's good to see that despite the changing atmosphere, that a blessed event like this has been revived, and inshallah may it be revived again and again. I'm just going to offer a few more or less random thoughts about an ayah in Allah's book, where he says, subhanahu wa ta'ala, أَلَيْسَ اللَّهُ بِكَافٍ عَبْدًا. Is not Allah sufficient for His servant? We look to Him, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, for inspiration and therefore for hope, particularly in times of difficulty and confusion, and hopefully in times of assurance and flourishing as well. And when we consider his blessed seerah, we see really nothing but a series of crises and challenges. We may grumble over our situation, we may feel perplexed, we may feel sorry for ourselves, we may feel that we have been abandoned. But when we compare our situation to the situation of earlier generations of Muslims who have been through crises greater than our own, and particularly when we compare our situation to the situation of the first blessed generation, we see how fortunate we are. A small band of believers in a dusty desert town, surrounded by a sea of idol worshippers, which was in turn surrounded by a sea of non-Muslim monotheists and Zoroastrians, threatened on every side. And yet sallallahu alayhi wasallam he was recorded by his Sahaba as having been the one who smiled the most. And we're following him in that. Despite these challenges, the burdens that would have crushed the back of a lesser man, he continued not just to persevere, but to smile, to relax, to joke, to forgive. Is not Allah sufficient for His servant? This was in his blessed heart, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because he knew that whatever misfortunes might come, Allah was enough for him. Those who come to Allah's book for the first time and open it may do so almost at random, but they are sure to come across the principle of tafweed, resignation. وَأُفَوِّضُ أَمْرِي إِلَى اللَّهِ, I hand over my affair to Allah. It's His, and who else could it belong to? Monotheism, tawheed, has radical consequences. It doesn't just mean affirming that on some abstract level the world has a creator and that that creator is one. It means following through all of the implications of that basic statement. Monotheism is perhaps the simplest of all ideas, the most obvious and appealing of all ideas, historically the most powerful idea. And the great strength of this ummah is that we are the people of La ilaha illallah. Other ummahs have had or continue to retain aspects and survivals of tawheed. We can claim that the monotheistic principle is emphasized more insistently within the context of our ummah than that of any other. But tawheed has to work on many levels. It's not just the abstract level of saying something, which is easy and in principle can be done even by those who don't quite believe it. The munafiqeen can also say La ilaha illallah. And every one of us has some particle of nifaq in his heart. Imam al-Hasan al-Basri, radiallahu anhu, was once insulted by a woman on the streets of Basra. She said, Ya munafiq, you hypocrite. Which is the worst insult one can offer to one of Allah's servants. But he turned to her smiling, radiallahu anhu, and said, Woman, you have found my real name, which everybody else in Basra has forgotten. Despite the highness of his state, he was afraid for his intention. So this is the universal experience of human beings. Nifaq impugns tawheed, and it's hard really to be pure. But Allah in His mercy and His